Shabbat Shalom, everybody. This is Rabbi Shmuel, Rob Stephen. Rosh be with you with this year's discussion of the Parsha that we read for Yom Kippur. And yes, it's not really a Parsha. It's not really a portion, or maybe it is. When we think of Parsha, we think of a Sedra. That is, the breakdown of the Torah into various portions that we read week by week. The parshas, the portions that encompass or are involved in the various festivals and holidays, are not necessarily complete parsha in themselves, but rather are culled from various parts of the Torah that relate in one way or another to that particular festival or holiday. One exception is Sukkot, and we're going to discuss that in the next portion. But right now, we're going to talk about Yom Kippur. So I hope you all have an easy fast if you're looking at this prior to Yom Kippur. And if you're looking at this or you're watching this after Yom Kippur, I hope you've had an easy fast. Or I wish you've had an easy fast. And I would like to say to you that may you be inscribed and sealed in the book of life. Speaking of which, I was told many years ago that it doesn't necessarily end with Yom Kippur. So the thinking is that you kind of have to the end of Shemini Atzeret. So in my mind, well, most people think of the high holidays as coming from Rosh Hashanah to the end of Yom Kippur, where we blow the shofar, say next year in Jerusalem. But some people will say that the high holidays extends from Rosh Hashanah to Shemini Atzeret. My thinking, as we've discussed before, goes from the beginning of Elul all the way to Simchat Torah. It's kind of on your mind that, we're starting a new year and what can we do to improve? So, all right. So now that I've repeated myself for the 10th time, let's talk about what we read, the Torah readings for Yom Kippur. There are two of them, one in the morning for Shachrit and one in the afternoon for the Mincha service. So the Shachrit service is actually very plain, and it's actually pretty obvious. It discusses the first time that Israel observed Yom Kippur, and it also talks about the process and procedures for the Kohen Gadol to effect atonement for the masses. And we've been through this many times. I'm sure you all kind of understand. The Kohen Gadol usually has 8 vestments, 4 white, 4 gold. Basically takes off the gold vestments. He's only left in the white. Enters into the Kadosh Kadoshim, which is the Holy of Holies, the innermost sanctum of the Mishkan, the tabernacle, or the temple when it was built, both of them, and the third temple when it's going to be built. And and this is where I'm kind of a little fuzzy. Does the Kohen Gadol, the head priest, the high priest, do 2 offerings, or does he do 3? Now, in our Maksur Hadash, the Maksur, which by the way means cycle, that we use here at Temple Shalom of Ontario, it describes 3 offerings. One for the Kohen himself, one for his family, and one for Israel. So, and maybe that's where they get the idea that a minimum of Torah readings should be 3, which we do Saturday afternoon and Monday morning and Thursday morning when we have Torah readings. So he does his offering, the bull. Then when he comes out, they have the 2 goats. They draw a lot. One goat is offered as a sin offering. The other goat gets a red tie around the goat's neck, sent out to the wilderness to Azazel. And Azazel owes an ale, the strength of God, or the cliff. And later on, I understand it was later on that the goat is actually thrown off a cliff as an offering too. So, okay. Yes, we don't do that anymore. But that was the idea, that the Kohen Gadol is making atonement or effecting atonement on behalf of the congregation. Now, of course, today, without a temple, we don't do animal sacrifices. And personally, my feeling is that I don't think we're going back to that. We've gone about 2,000 years without it. I certainly look forward to the rebuilding of the temple, to the third temple. I think it's going to be more of a synagogue. I think the days of of animal offerings is over. And what have we been doing for the last 2,000 years? It's been exclusively prayer. An interesting story. So a couple came to me, and the woman said that she got involved in, what is it, Chat GPT? Is that the website with the artificial intelligence? And that she was kind of making up her own prayers in a Jewish mode. And I said, that's absolutely beautiful. In the Miller course, I pointed out to them that in the Miller course, they talk about two types of prayers, Kavana and Kava. And the Kava are the formal prayers when you open up a siddur. The Kavanah is your own personal honoring. That's what Kavanah means. And you're all doing your personal prayers. Absolutely wonderful. In fact, for me as a rabbi, I complimented her on her devotion and on her feeling that she wants to express gratitude. So what a wonderful way to do this. And if anybody else would like to try it, go for it. So, I mean, the prayers are basically standardized like they are in Yom Kippur, to affect a certain result. So think about the prayers and the Yom Kippur service as a GPS. All right, you're on the road and you get on your GPS, and what is it going to do? It's going to tell you the most effective, the most gas efficient way to go. So you go. And you're on the road, you look around, there's a bunch of people with you, and you're all taking the same route because it's the fastest, most efficient route. What if you want to get off one day and take the scenic route? That's fine. It may not get you there as fast, but if it feels good, then go for it. Take a few extra moments, get yourself in the right frame of mind. And that's nothing wrong with, a little bit of personal prayers. In fact, when we do Yom Kippur and we do all the, Ashamru, Bagad, we do the Ashamru, which is what it's called, and the Al-Chetz, for the sin of, and we do that. If you have some personal prayers or some personal forgiveness that you'd like from God, go for it. Now, we should be asking, and we're kind of obligated to go to people that we've offended and ask for forgiveness. We do it 3 times. Very humbling experience, isn't it, to ask somebody for forgiveness, because you're really kind of at your most vulnerable, and everybody has the fear, what if they go off on me and say, I don't like you, I'm never going to accept your, you've tried. And it's really kind of on them if they want to do that. I mean, they could say, well, I appreciate your apology, but right now I'm not ready for it. Okay, we'll revisit it at another time. Kind of the gray area. So, which is really what the Talmud is all about, gray areas, black and white. Okay, but then we got all this gray. That's why the Talmud takes 7 years and 4 months to read, right? Okay, so that's basically the process for Yom Kippur as discussed in the Torah. And no, we don't follow it because we don't have the temple. We don't do the priests anymore. We do rabbis, yours truly. So it's a little bit different. All right, let's talk about the afternoon reading of Yom Kippur. And this is chapter 18. That was chapter 16, and it was the beginning of the Parsha Achronomot after the death of Nadab and Abihu. Chapter 18 is forbidden relationships. So I'm not going to do the spiel I've been doing for the last few years about, man should not live with man. Done. Okay, let's talk about all the other things. All right, so the chapter, yes, opens up with God telling Moses, look, I am the Lord your God, who brought you out of Egypt, and I'm going to tell you right now, when you get to the promised land, do not engage in the practices you saw the Egyptians do, and do not engage in the practices that the Canaanites tribes, who you will dispossess, do. Okay, it is an abomination, and it is not the way to be holy. So basically, what they're saying is that sexually anything goes. Anything, anyone, whatever. And we know as Jews that that is not a great path to morality, because the family is the basic unit of society. And people talk about the traditional roles of husband and wife. And the marriage really needs to kind of be sacrosanct, so you're starting a family unit off on the right foot. This is where children learn their social mores. There's an old saying, like father, like son. Just had a discussion with somebody about what the parents did and what they're doing, and how it affected their behavior. Yes, that is why in the 13 attributes, they say that God says, I deliver sin unto the 3rd and 4th generation. It's not that God is blaming you for what your parents did. Rather, it's saying that you are under some pretty bad influence. It's going to take a lot of effort to shake it. It may take 3 or 4 generations to shake that evil influence because the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. In fact, the sages say that somebody who grows up in a very impure or not supportive or not positive environment and they become righteous, they're ahead of the game as somebody that grew up in a great environment. I mean, it was easy, you knew what to do, but somebody that had to figure it out for themselves and basically dismiss their past influence, that's kind of tough. And the rabbis, really account for that. So that's what this chapter is about. It's like, okay, we understand you've got desires, you've got temptations, you've got lust. There is a proper way to deal with it. And that's what we got to get back to. All right. So, good Yontif. May you be sealed and inscribed and sealed in the book of life for a healthy, happy, and prosperous new year. Good Yontif.